The Killing Fields 1-to-1 scale skirmish battles by the Purple Druid. He's got a YouTube channel. Check it out. I'm going to do a really simple learning scenario today. It looks like we're going to have, 3 to 5 units per side. As you already saw from the thumbnail, we're going to do Dank Elves versus the Goblins. But the Goblins, as a full-mounted unit, they don't really work out so well. It's probably not the best for learning how to play a game. So I do have on tap some of the big boys. Mr. Stripey Pants himself. The Ogres are going to be making an appearance as a unit. I've gone with the random locations, 5 objective markers. Whoever holds the most at the end of the game wins the game. But this is really just a learning game where I'm trying to figure out how combat movement and all of that stuff works. So to that end, did a simple roll-off to determine who deploys first. Did some alternating deployment. You guys know how this works. It's not your first trip to the miniature wargame rodeo. The Goblins have wound up dumping their giant on the far side, and then they have a block of spear gobbos right down here in they would be their right wing, I guess you could say. The 5 big uglies are in the center with 6 dire wolves. Now those wolves we're going to class as light cavalry. There's a lot more cavalry on the Goblin side than on the Dank Elf side, but the Dank Elves are not without some cavalry of their own. As you can see, we've got our shooters, kind of light troops down here, and then the heavy sword guys. We've got some Cold One riders, and then our unit of heavy spears and a giant tree, classed as a giant. So the 2 big giants are, oh, you can't see him. He's standing up on that hill. The big thing for the Dank Elves is they wanted to make sure that they secured that hill because they don't want to be charging up hills. That never works. Now, in this particular game, the troop classification is very similar to what we see in Chainmail. You have light, medium, and heavy, and movement looks a little something like this. I know you can't really see it, but essentially, every unit has different movements for whether we're in clear, hilly, or wooded terrain. Cavalry actually have 3 movement rates because they can move as they can walk, run, and they can charge, which gives them a lot more bonus movement when they do charge, right? So it's normal and charge. Most infantry are going to be moving 5 inches and 10 inches. I'm actually going to go ahead. I think I'm going to use inches in this tabletop just so that we can come to grips a lot faster. If I use centimeters with my 15 millimeter figures, these guys are going to be separated by like 45 centimeters. That's 5 turns of movement. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm going to use inches. I'm going to do it for bowfire too. So it's a really cramped and crowded battlefield. Perhaps it's a valley. I don't know. And here's what that looks like. The Goblins are blue force. They have to declare charges first. Then you move the charging figures. Red force does their charge response. So missile, shoot, or throw. And then move the remaining figures in units. This is the only charge we have. Those medium riders are going to go chasing into the cold ones. They outnumber them 2-to-1. Everybody else is just going to advance forward. The light riders here may be able to seize that forward and the critical 3rd objective marker. The problem here is that these guys only charge 10 inches. I misread. I thought it was 18. So unfortunately for the Goblins, they're going to get to right about here. And then they're going to have to suffer a missile fire attack by those members of this unit that can see. We're going to call it 5 of these hand crossbow guys. Even though these hand crossbow elves are not the target of the charge, they can still fire because they're within 3 inches of the unit that is. Now I'm going to scale it back a little bit. They can only fire in 2 ranks, so we'll call it 4 guys have line of sight. They're going to be firing at this large unit. I'm going to class these crossbows as hand crossbows with a maximum range of 24 inches. As you can see, up to 12 inches, we roll 3 dice. We'll total the result and divide by 5 because their target is in the clear. That's how many hits we do. Not figures removed, just hits. In this game, each figure has effectively 2 attributes, vigor and might. And vigor is like hit points and might is fighting ability. So we roll all 12 dice, and we tally up the results. I rolled a 47, which means we did a total of 9 hits. Each of those hits is going to do a D average, meaning 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. I'm going to roll 9 dice. Ones count as 3s, 6s count as 4s. That's how many actual points of damage are done. I rolled 2d average for each of the units on the table. And as you can see, these goblin riders have a vigor of 9. So for every 9 points of damage, we'll remove 1 figure. You may want to invest in D average dice. Again, like I said, any 6 counts as a 4, and any 1 counts as a 3. You get the exact same result. So we can pair these up by 9s. That's 1, 2, 3. Oh, and then we have 8 more points of damage. So we can take off 3 figures, and we have 1 guy with 8 points of damage. We'll have to figure out how to mark that. Red chips will be worth 5. Yellow will be worth 3. And we shouldn't need any more than 9. So I think that's good. We're just going to apply it to units. I don't know. Maybe I need to do 1 wound to each of the guys. This is an easier, cleaner way to do this, I think. So as you can see, the rest of the goblin force has moved up. They've grabbed 3 of the objective markers and are now, if the game were to end after a single turn, it would go the way of the goblins. But it doesn't. Now the blue force gets to move. And so the cold ones are going to charge into combat with the goblins. And because now in this game, if you're light infantry or light cavalry, you can countercharge. And so you kind of got to figure out how to meet in the middle. I think it's the chargers move half. And then like maybe these guys, they're not going to want to charge. Instead, we're just going to move them up to about there. Remember, no charging uphill, I think is a thing. So we're just going to try to get these guys into position. At the end of movement, the table looks like this. These guys could have fired if they had withheld their fire. They did not. Check it out. They got a line of sight to these wolves over here. But remember, come to think of it, maybe 4 of these guys can fire at the wolves because only 4 of them fired before. If this was a mass battle game, these archers over here could not fire at this light cavalry unit. They're really wolves, I know. But these 4 fired. These 4 still have bolts in their little crossbows. They're not reloading like their buddies are. So I'm going to go ahead and roll 12 dice and just repeat the process. Remember that for every 5 points of damage, because they're in the open and they're within 12 inches, for every 5 points, I do a hit. And I rolled a 45, so once again, I did 9 hits. These light riders, wolves, have a vigor of 8. So we're going to roll 9 average dice. Once again, any 6s count as 4s, 1s count as 3s. It's just that simple. So we can actually turn each 6 to face the 4, and we didn't get any 1s, so that makes the math easy. A result of a 32 divided by 8 means we lose 4 of these guys. And I'm really impressed at how deadly shooting is. Not going to lie. Might be a little OP, but it might just be that I don't have enough terrain, and it might be that I'm being cheap by letting half a unit fire when they should all be reloading. I don't know. We'll find out. Now here's where things get interesting. You'll notice that I've already moved all the rest of the guys on the goblin side. And that means looking at the Valor table. Combat isn't guaranteed to you. We have to find out if those cold ones, outnumbered by 2 to 3, are really going to do what we want them to do. In this case, it's a little easy because each of the figures involved in the combat has a might of 3. So it's 18 to 27, meaning the attacker has 2 units to 3 units for the defender. Hex and Counter Wargamers will be familiar with this table. Now, bear in mind, if we had some advantage, if we were charging downhill, then we would have a shift in favor of the attacker, meaning to the right. If we were charging a unit in a fortified position, we might have to shift 2 columns to the left, which of course would make it harder. Now, in case of our little battle here, our 2 to 3, we rolled an AR2, which is attacker routed. Oh my goodness. First, remove 1/4 of any remaining vigor from the attacker's figure or might from a unit, beginning with wounded figures. All of the attacker's remaining figures are moved directly away D6 inches. Oh my goodness, we got to roll a D6, and I get a 2. Except that the AR2 means it's 2 D6 inches, so they're going to run away 6 inches, which on my table ain't great. The cold ones only have a vigor of 5, so that would be 30 points. I'm going to remove a total of 7. I remove 1 full figure, and then I have to remove another half a figure. right? For 6 figures, I got to remove 1.5. So I'm going to actually round up and drop down 3 wounds on top of this unit. That charge didn't work so well. That does end the turn. Now it's time for the riders, the goblins, to counteract. And they are going to go ahead and charge here. If we can drive these guys off, we'll be in really good stead. And with their shooting response, they whittle the riders down to just 5 making contact. We'll take a look at the Valor table in a minute. Let me just point out that everybody else here in the distance on the goblin side has moved up. The goblins now control 4 of the 5 points, objective markers. So they're doing pretty good. The shooters only have a might of 1. The riders have a might of 3. So even though the riders are outnumbered 2 to 1, because they have a 3 to 1 advantage in might, they're actually at a 3 to 2 on the Valor table. Had they charged the routing Cold One riders, they would have experienced, well, first of all, they're hitting them in the rear, so that's a 2-column shift, plus another 2-column shift. So even if they were at 1 to 1 with the Cold One riders at that point, now they're still going to get hit by the shooters. But even if they're at 1 to 1, that 4-column shift is huge, because notice the attacker withdrew is the worst thing that could happen to you. With a 1, 2, 3, 4-column shift, the worst thing that can happen to you is this M result, which is M is going to be melee engagement. You just go right to melee. Right? So in this case, because we're at 3 to 2, again, we could still get that attacker withdraws, which is far better than attacker routes. So let's roll that D10. Hope that my light stays on. I'm having some difficulties, some technical difficulties, and not just with the chickens being extra loud. So we roll a 3, and that's going to be DW. And a DW, I'll show you here in the rule book, is Defender withdraws. All the defender's figures are moved directly away from the opposing units, D6 inches. The attacking figure will complete its charge. So here's where things get even more interesting. The Goblin Riders have 3 inches of movement remaining. So after falling back 3 inches, the Goblins catch up to the shooters. Now that's all the movement that our Goblins have left over. But they do have an advantage here. We're going to go back to the Valor table, and we still are on the 3 to 2 ratio because the defenders didn't lose anything, but we have a 2-column shift. Notice that the worst thing that happens is that we go to melee. On an 8, 9, 10, we go to melee. No more falling back for the attackers. I roll a 9, and that's great because now we get to see how melee works in this game. We're going to do a little 1v1 across the board here. I'm not sure how it works if we have 2v1s, but this is not, now we get to the 1-on-1. This is a 1-to-1 game. It's a skirmish game. So we're going to go from top to bottom. And we need to have 3 different color sets of dice in order to pull this off. The attacker rolls 3 red dice. It says green in the rules. I'm using red instead. And 3 white dice. The defender rolls 1 die. That's the blue. For each of the red dice. So let's roll and we'll see what happens. And we're doing this top one first. Let's do a 2v1 here down on the very bottom so we can see what happens when you have multiple defenders in this case. If any of the red and blue dice are matched, the defender can choose to re-roll those. Now, that's not the case here. So if one of these was a 6, the defender could say, I want to re-roll these 2 6s. Wounds are caused for each 1 or 2 scored. Wait a minute. So you're telling me if I had a might of 6 and I'm attacking a guy with a might of 1, he can do 5 hits on me? That seems a little weird to me. But we'll do it as the druid says. If you have a might greater than 1, you take a couple of wounds. So this guy here has 2 wounds, and because he only has a might of 1 and we rolled a 1, we kill him. He's gone. Oh, I see, because these might come up as 1s as well, so the attacker has twice as many chances to wound the defender. Got it. So we do the same thing for the next pair in line. The defender could say, let's re-roll these dice, but why would he? At the end of the day, because the attacker has the 1 wound, this figure is removed. We repeat the process for the third fight in line. The 5-5-6 mean nothing. Red gets a single hit and blue gets nothing. And so this guy goes bye-bye. So to no one's surprise, the guys that are riding, the guy with a might of 3 is just crushing it. Okay, now we got to figure out what happens when you have 2 defenders. I see. From reading the rules, I take it to mean if you are defending against 2 attackers, but even though we've got 1 attacker on these 2 shooty boys, it still counts as just a 1v1. You only ever attack 1 figure at a time, so I guess that makes a certain amount of sense. Now in this case, the defender gets a 1, and the attacker does not, so the attacker is going to suffer 1 wound, and that's going to be it for this particular melee. Now we roll a d6 for each wound. So these are not wounds. So in other words, this guy is going to suffer 11 hits and he's going to die. And this guy suffered 1 hit, and so he's going to, again, remember, because the might was reduced, the guy's just gone. So this guy actually suffers not 1 wound, but 3 wounds out of his 8. And we'll take him off the back, I guess, just to kind of keep it lined up. So that's kind of how that works. I'm gonna be honest, Purple Druid, some interesting ideas at play here. I think that there's a lot of busy work to kind of figure out exactly what's going on. I think this feels a lot more like an RPG combat mechanic. Roll a d6 for each wound. Subtract from the that's what we did. Now, defenders with a might of 0, that's these 3 guys. Now the defenders have an option of attacking, but these guys, because their might is 0, they have to run away to the tune of d6 inches. So 5 and 6, I think, are going to take us off the table. Not quite. We're going to put, there's 5, there's 6, and then this guy only fell back 2 inches. So now our battle line is left with just 2 guys fighting this guy. Okay, and we just repeat the process to see what happens there. And then, if the attacker has no dice remaining, move the attacker the remaining charge move. Any figures that might reduce to 0 must make an immediate rally check. Failure means they will route 2d6 inches directly away from the opposing figure. So at this point, if your might is reduced to 0, which I think this guy, he has a might of 2. So as he attacks these guys, we just flip the script. Now the defenders are rolling blue and white dice, and the attacker is rolling red dice. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that if you roll triple 1s, if you get a red, white, and a blue, 1, 1, 1, somebody is going to die. On a 1, 2, or 3, it's the attacker. Yeah, so in this case, this attacker is just dead because we rolled those triple 1s. Although the defender can say, hey, I think before we do that, I want to re-roll this match pair. Yeah, see, my light keeps going out. I think we're going to have to wrap this up until I figure out what the short is. We're just having all kinds of technical issues here today. Between the birds and the lights and everything. I got to tell you, I'm astonished at how hostile the universe is to my actually getting any game time in. Like, these little things that just keep cropping up are just... I think you feel me. I think you know it. I think you guys experience this all the time, where it's just like things just tend to align themselves. So the defender can say, yeah, know what? I want to re-roll these, which he does. And look at that. We still get snake eyes. So we still have the 1, 1, 1. The defender still dies, right? So that's kind of where we're at. So there it is in a nutshell. The Killing Fields by the Purple Druid. This is in beta test. If you have ideas for streamlining or improving, then make sure you go over to his Substack. I hope I don't get what do they call that thing? De-algorithmed for saying the name of Substack. I know over on X that is the killing word. Over here, maybe not so much. There you go. See? Once again, we're just going to have to go with the spooky if this is the way it's going to be. Purple Druid has a Substack, Wargame Culture. You're going to want to check it out. He does a lot of good reading. This is the kind of complex and somewhat convoluted gameplay you can expect from a guy who has studied at the feet of Tony Bath. And there's a lot going on here under the hood. And I think the big problem is probably mine. Like, I've got 40 to 50 guys on the table. You probably want to limit it to 12 to 15, given the number of different attributes that you have to track. Because you're not just tracking wounds, you're tracking vigor. And if you're playing a campaign game, you have to track, Things like fatigue. Did you win last time? That can give your leaders bonuses. Oh, brother, I didn't even get into leaders on this game. There's just a lot going on. I think there's a lot to explore here. And I think if you had a few hours, 3 hours to kill, and you had a scenario already built for you, ready to go, and you were having some friends over to kind of take your time and kind of, shoot the bull while you're playing and work your way through all of these processes, this would be a great way to kill an afternoon. But for my channel, at least, because I'm trying to get from start to conclusion about 40 minutes, there's a lot of different stuff going on. It doesn't make for a great filming experience unless you want to watch one of those guys that just kind of hangs out and does like a 3 to 4 hour chill stream. It'd be great for that too. If you have one of those channels, yeah, throw this game on there, man. It'd be great. Could be a lot of fun. Just a little busy for me, so we're going to put this aside, and maybe when we're out of beta testing and the thing is finally resolved, we can walk through it. Maybe I get some of these technical situations under control and I find a nice quiet night, then I can kind of work on that myself. And okay, I gotta go. Till next time, I'm praying for you.